If you're the police, where are your badges?
Badges? We ain't got no badges. We don't need no badges. I don't have to show you any stinking badges.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
Is it my turn? Is it my turn? I'm just waiting a little bit longer, John, because of the fact that we had a little bit of technical snafu, and I just want to make sure all the electrons have settled properly. Have they settled properly?
It's electrons. Boogie, woogie, woogie.
I think it's electric. Okay, here we go. Normally, I start off with the fact that John Combest does this website every single day for the past 14,000 years, never misses a day. It's like the Drudge Report, the old Drudge Report, not the new crappy Drudge Report of the old days with nothing but Missouri content. But today, I'm going to start out by saying, geez Louise, yesterday was a news day. Jimmy Kimmel, Howard Stern, Tylenol. Can we do any more in one single day, John?
I think we probably at least need some acetaminophen to get us through it.
Yeah, which Trump couldn't pronounce, which is kind of funny. Okay, that is John Combest, and he does this show, he does this website every single day. He does dozens of items, and it's nothing fancy to the point where you go there, don't expect all sorts of HTML banners like on my nice websites as opposed to John's Web 0.0 website. On my site, you'll see flashing banners, you'll see videos. On John's site, you'll see nothing but links, and those links are to important stories. But what we do with this show is we take the top 3 items according to John Combest. Oh, by the way, should we preface before we get into this? We mentioned that we had an interesting situation in the show yesterday. You want to recap this quickly?
What went on yesterday, Brad?
Well, the fact that I was contacted by one of the people involved in the story. And the interesting part of it is he didn't contact John Combest because John Combest never gets his phone number or text number out in the air.
Correct. Yeah, I'm a normal human being. So what, are we going to talk to that gentleman in C Block, Brad?
7:45. You want to give...
Very nice,
you want to just
Isn't it amazing that you do a show that people listen to now?
Well, here's the only problem. The guy actually contacted me and he said, Brad, I never listen to your radio station. The only way I know anything about what you do is because of John Combest, because he puts these things up in Twitter, and he does. If I don't even know he had a radio station. Is radio still? Do people still listen to that? Does Nielsen still have anything to do with telling people that even though nobody believes everybody listens to radio, 92% of the adult population listens to radio once a week? Is that really true? That's what he said.
What a great story at 7:05, Brad.
No, real quick recap of the whole story.
Oh, yeah. Well, so there were several awesome things that we talked about in the A-Block, Brad. We talked about yesterday Turning Point USA and the great work that Bob Onder.
You know what I'm talking about. This the deal with the fight.
They're doing to provide seed money. We talked about Chelsea Rodriguez calling out Missouri Democratic Party's directionless, quote-unquote, leadership and arrogance. And we also talked about a scuffle that took place last October at the South County Democrat campaign headquarters involving a state representative and a key member of local Democrat staff, Brad. So pick any of your favorites of those stories, Brad.
The last one, and one of the guys, and you and I are still not sure how I pronounce his name. We'll get it when we get him on here.
I think it's Boesch.
John Boesch, and it's spelled weird. It's spelled B-O-E. But that could be, that could be Boesch. You know what I mean? Sometimes
it could be. Yeah, I worked with a woman who spelled her last name the same way, and she pronounced it Boesch. Okay. So who knows?
And not the TV show Boesch. Okay, he contacted me yesterday and said he wanted to come on and tell his side of the story, so we'll have him on 7:45. Now,
that's awesome, Brad.
We go back to John Combest. He does this yada, 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 yada. And we start off with this guy right here.
I'm Casey Kasem.
And we start off with...
In third place...
A headline from the Jefferson City News Tribune today. This is a story that you're quite familiar with, Brad, because you know more about this topic than do I. The headline, state releases $700 million plan to expand broadband access. Now, Brad, because you're a nonagenarian in your kayfabe age, and in the real world, you're a septuagenarian, you know a lot about how broadband has expanded. You've been a part of the internet since the early days. And I think the fascinating nugget in this story was not in this story, but I did a little bit of digging and got a statistic about our broadcast area. In general, Brad, what's actually in the story from the News Tribune, the DED, the Department of Economic Development, their Office of Broadband, has released their final plan. And they say, hey, here's how we're going to go to the parts of Missouri that don't have broadband access today. Here's how we're going to open up a little bit of competition, preferably among Missouri-based companies, as I read it, and allow these folks to have greater access to broadband. Now, what I thought was fascinating, Brad, I dug into the plan, and of the 10 Missouri counties with the highest number of, quote, unserved and underserved locations, Franklin County was the number 2 county in the state after Stone County, which is down on the Missouri-Arkansas border. Franklin County had the second most number of unfunded locations. So that is about almost 9,000 locations. Now, Brad, I'm guessing that includes households and businesses, but I don't know. Locations could be referring to something else. I didn't take the time this morning to dive deeper into that. But I thought it was unique that, Franklin County is so close to the St. Louis metropolitan area that I would have assumed that the places that didn't have great broadband access would have been a little bit further out. So this plan goes into detail about exactly how they're going to go about after public comments. The Office of Broadband Development is going to take this plan, as I read it, to the feds and say, hey, are you good with this? And then once the feds give some sort of okay, Missouri is going to start spending more money, which had been allocated years ago, to improving broadband access across the state of Missouri. So I'd say, Brad, for the last decade or so, Missouri leaders have been talking about how we need to get everyone up to a higher level of internet access. I'm laughing because I always think of the example of Congressman Jason Smith from the southeast part of the state. He says he hears his colleagues talk about getting every part of their state in 5G. And he always says, hey, where I'm from, we're just happy to get a G. So good news, I think, for folks in Franklin County and other areas that are, quote, underserved and unserved.
John, can I give you my opinion on this, which is going to...
You would have one, Brad.
Once again, you're going to roll your eyes when I say this. The solution could be done in 2 weeks. And you know how it could be fixed in 2 weeks?
How's that, Brad?
Well, you just said this has been going on for a couple of years. Isn't there money already allocated for this?
You're right. There has been money allocated for years.
All they have to do is take these 9,000 points you talked about that they don't have access, right? And the government,
in Franklin County, yeah.
And the government just calls up Starlink and says, hey, we need 9,000 sets of equipment, and here's the 9,000 addresses to send them to, and send us the bill and we'll pay for it. Simple as that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was just waiting a half second there, Brad, because I think it's the first time you've referenced an advancement in Franklin County and didn't take a shot at Dave Schatz.
No. Well, but see, the only problem with that is that you would have to, Dave Schatz would make you send 5% of whatever your gross pay was because of the fact that he would want to have that, on a monthly basis. But no, seriously.
Just keep your receipts, Brad. Keep your receipts and mail them in, and Schatz will give you a refund.
Okay, seriously, it's so simple. And see, this is what's crazy about this is because there's the solution. Starlink works anywhere.
And Brad, hold on one second. You know very well, and I know that your solution is workable. And the reason why it would never happen is, can you imagine the attitude of people that would say, can you believe Starlink got a sweetheart deal from the government?
Yeah, but
imagine how many people have to see this. Imagine how many RFPs have to go out for every piece of cable that's laid, Brad.
John, I told the story, and I've told the story at our KSLQ transmitter site. I don't know how many years ago it's been, maybe 7, 8, 9 years ago. They put fiber. We couldn't get internet up there. They put fiber along the road where our transmitter site is. And I could not, find who to talk to about fiber. I told you the crazy story. I went to the Lumen headquarters right there at 40 and 141. Walked in and the guard threw me out, okay? When I finally got in touch with somebody who knew what was going on, one of the contractors who came out and took a look at our place told me the story that the government paid Lumen to put fiber in the ground, but Lumen didn't care about hooking anybody up because they were making money just because they had fiber in the ground. The federal government, or some government, I don't know, state, county, I don't know what it was, somebody was sending them a check every month because of the fact that they put the fiber in the ground and there was fiber available. But they didn't want to have anybody connected to it because that would cost them money. They'd have to have a tech go out, they have to splice the fiber and yada, 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 because they made money just having the fiber in the ground. See, this is the kind of thing about government that drives me crazy. There's an internet problem. Starlink's available. Matter of fact, I'm getting stuff now that the equipment's now half price. I think you pay $250 for the equipment. Government, $250. One-time exposure. Hold it. Let me pull up my calculator. Okay. Can I do a little math?
Do a little math there, Brad. A little mathletics there.
9,000 times $250 is $2.25 million. Do you think the government has $2.25 million already spent on stupid research for this project?
I think they probably got it laying around, Brad.
Okay, $2.25 million. You cut a deal with Starlink. You go, okay, your normal services is, or in other words, what you do is, and here's what you do. You go to Starlink and go, okay, give us like a real base level service, like a 2G or a 3G service, and we'll pay for that. And the customers come upgrade to the 5G, 1 megabit per second, thing on their own. John, problem solved, right?
But how would those folks be able to get a fast-loading Flash player on one of Brad's high-tech websites, Brad?
Flash has been out for a long time.
Hey, Flash
Brad.
is out?
Flash is gone. And remember, if I will tell you the crazy story with the Missourian, and I shouldn't tell this because John's going to think I'm digging on the Missourian again.
Yeah, you told it before, Brad. Tell it again for the second time in a month.
The Missourian did all their ads on their website, on emissourian.com, in Flash. The only problem with that was if you used any kind of a Apple device, a Macintosh or an iPad or an iPhone, it didn't work because that was the thing that Steve Jobs had this feud. You probably know who the guy was, the guy who pioneered Flash, and Flash was not supported. So if you went to the Missourian on your iPhone or on your Mac or on your iPad, you didn't get any of the ads. So if you're an advertiser for the Missourian online, the only people who were able to see your ads were people who are looking at on their PC desktops or on their Android phones. Everybody else was eliminated from the ads. Okay, are we done with that?
At 7:15, maybe we'll get into the second story.
Up a notch to number 2.
A headline from KBIA in Columbia, a reporter named Casper Dowdy. Brad, I'd like to take a moment of personal privilege and thank Mr. Dowdy. I don't think that he would mind me mentioning this, for reaching out to us after we mentioned him and his work a couple times on the show. So thank you, Mr. Dowdy. I think it's kind of reporters to acknowledge when they get referenced on our show. I think it's just a nice, classy thing to do. So shout out to Mr. Dowdy. His piece today, Brad, First Amendment experts criticize letter to MU employees. Now, you may recall, Brad, I know you diligently go to johncombest.com every day, which is why you never have to ask if I had a story on my website. And Mr. Dowdy reports that Moon Choi, he's the boss at Mizzou, had sent out a note last Wednesday. And I'll just sum it up, Brad. He's like, hey, guys, on social media, watch your mouth. Don't say anything stupid about Charlie Kirk. Now, the folks that write statements for Moon Choi wrote it a lot more artfully than I just delivered it. But that was the message. Don't be an idiot. Don't say something that would distract people from our mission here at Mizzou. So Mr. Dowdy went out and talked to a couple First Amendment experts to say, hey, is this kosher, what Moon Choi told his employees? And the short of it, Brad, to sum it up quickly, is yes, it's fair for Moon Choi and the folks at Mizzou and the University of Missouri system broadly to tell their employees, watch your mouth, don't embarrass us. And if you do say something about politics, at least have the decency to say, I'm saying this in my role as a citizen and not an employee of the University of Missouri system. I should be more clear when I say that last point that I made, Brad, came from a First Amendment expert from the First Amendment Coalition. And to paraphrase what he said, he's like, look, just make it clear when you talk about stuff that you're not speaking on behalf of the university. So I think it was probably in the last 2 weeks since the tragedy happened on September 10th, I think universities around the country, a communications department that's probably pretty sleepy and doesn't have to do a whole lot generically across the U.S., has, huddled with their team and their consultants, and they say, let's have a standby statement. We got to send some direction out to our employees, and we have to toe the line between telling them, we appreciate your outspoken nature, but don't be an idiot.
Last week on this very radio station, Eric Erickson, who's on from noon to 3, who is an attorney and a very interesting guy, gave probably a 10-minute dissertation on this. And I've heard this, and once again, he's an attorney. He knows this kind of stuff. And I've heard this before, that he dispelled the myth of you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. And essentially he said, you can. And that's one of the things that he explained. But he talked about this whole crazy thing about how the First Amendment has its limitations, as does most of the stuff in the Constitution, even in the Second Amendment. Second Amendment, you have your right to bear arms, but you don't have your right to bear arms at the bank when you're pointing them at the teller. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, exactly, Brad. And I think that Mr. Dowdy in this piece does a good job of delineating that as well. Of course you have free speech as an American, but if you're doing something, and Moon Choi's words were to the effect of, we need to, as a university, be efficient and deliver the things that, on our objectives efficiently. And anything that gets in the way of us, acting on our mission is an impediment to efficiency. And therefore, you wouldn't be doing your job if you just go around creating distractions.
Did you hear that new song that KOPN in Columbia is playing?
No, what is it, Brad?
It's a remake of the Cat Stevens song, I've been following a Moon Choi, Moon Choi, Moon Choi.
I don't know the original version, Brad, but you know who does. The subject's of story number 1.
The number 1.
Yes, that's right. A piece from the Hill publication, the national publication I linked to today. The headline, more than 1 year out, battle for House majority is a jump ball. Boy, do I love sports ball references, Brad. WNBA and NBA references there. A jump ball. And the gist of the whole piece, to sum it up in 15 seconds, Democrats have a little momentum because they're the party out of power, but Republicans are redistricting. Excuse me. So that's, anything that Democrats gain by being the party out of power, Republicans are negating it by drawing some of these favorable congressional districts. I included it today, Brad. I don't include generic national stories on my website because you can get those anywhere. But Republican consultant Gregg Keller, have you heard of Gregg Keller, Brad?
I have.
Oh, yeah, you have. He was quoted in this piece talking about Charlie Kirk. Did you know that Gregg Keller knew Charlie Kirk, Brad?
Everybody knew Charlie Kirk, John. Everybody.
There you go. You get the reference. He says he's talking about the momentum of Charlie Kirk and what it has done for young conservatives around the country. Gregg says, quote, this is something that is going to reverberate through American politics for the next 50 years. It is just how conservatives, this new generation of kids coming in. Sorry, I read that quote incorrectly, but you get the gist of it, Brad. Gregg is saying that this is a big deal. And what Charlie Kirk did and the renewed interest in Turning Point USA is going to reverberate for decades. And Brad, I don't think Gregg would mind me mentioning that I reached out to Gregg yesterday and confirmed that Gregg did indeed meet Charlie Kirk in his nascent days when he was just a young man beginning the idea of Turning Point USA. Charlie Kirk worked for Mark Kirk, no relation, in the 2010 Senate campaign. Gregg was doing a lot of U.S. Senate work during that period of time. So I just wanted to mention that as a follow-up to B Block yesterday.
John, I don't want to sound like I'm any kind of a big deal because I'm not. But I remember Charlie Kirk when he was in kindergarten. Matter of fact,
Brad?
One of my friends was his kindergarten teacher, and she used to call me up and say, "Hey, would you come over and talk to Charlie?" And I talked to Charlie, and Charlie was really interesting back in those kindergarten days. Yeah.
That's amazing, Brad. Brad, I was thinking about it this morning. One of the greatest things about you is you do sometimes a little bit of projection. And, sometimes, Brad, if you're prone to, exaggerate a little bit, maybe sometimes when you hear someone make a simple declarative statement, you might assume that they're also a big exaggerator too, even if they're not.
Well, John's talking about the fact that Mr. Kirk, not Charlie, but the other Kirk, says, "I've known him for 18 years."
You mean Gregg Keller?
Gregg Keller, I'm sorry. Well,
and said 15, not 18.
Right, 15.
So we're exaggerating already.
31 minus 15 is 16. You knew him when he was 16 years old? I still...
Yeah, hey, listen, Brad, and again... someone who's prone to exaggeration, you might hear a simple declarative sentence and think, oh, that person obviously exaggerates as much as I do.
Okay, I will say this, and I will get in trouble for saying this. I think it's sad that so many people who, they're trying to essentially hitch their wagon to a famous person who unfortunately was murdered, okay?
It happens every time there's a death, doesn't it, Brad?
And I find it abhorrent. And once again, they talk about Trump making about himself. Everybody, well, I knew Charlie Kirk. Charlie knew I had beers together. No. Once again, I talked about it yesterday, somewhat facetiously, but seriously, Charlie Kirk was the world's best networker. That's what we should remember Charlie Kirk for. Not the fact that he was this incredible guy who went around to college campuses and pitched his faith and pitched Republican ideas and conservative ideas. No, he knew everybody. Can you imagine if his phone went up for auction with the president's number and J.D. Vance's number, all these people in his phone, in his contact list, once again, not because it's Charlie Kirk's phone, but just because of the fact that someone would have all those contacts and say, "Oh, I'm going to call J.D. Vance," and J.D. Vance.
Yeah, they'd have a direct line to him. And I mentioned to Greg yesterday, which I hadn't done since September 10th. Brad, sometimes selfishly we look at stuff myopically, and I hadn't thought of a number of friends of mine who actually knew Charlie Kirk, including Greg. I had even yet to extend my condolences to Greg. And I knew a number of folks, including Will Scharf, who actually knew Charlie personally. And so I feel for them in their loss.
Well, John, here's the difference. When I pass away, which the way I'm going might be 2 weeks from tomorrow, the people who knew me will say, "I didn't know the guy. I didn't know anything about him."
That's just because we don't want to be dragged into debtor court.
Right. I have no idea who that guy was. Okay, you ready? We're going into B block.